Okay, first try, let's go. And I say first try because I've been trying to get to other topics to do a video essay on. In particular, to deal with race and diversity in writing. But I keep coming across other topics that I would like to talk about. So, on this particular topic, I am trying to get through it as quickly but succinctly as possible. We are on Reddit, the cesspool of the internet, right there underneath 4chan. We are on the subreddit r/gatesopen come on in. These articles go into the effects of hormone therapy, gender affirmation surgery, and whatnot, and their effect on suicidal ideation and depression, and otherwise the psychological outcomes of transgender people. I don't necessarily have an issue with it. I'm sure there are people who are completely against sex reassignment and whatnot. That is not my argument. The sorts of arguments that I find are more in line with my own thinking lies more in where does the line need to be drawn as far as when children should be allowed to begin transitioning. That is a completely different subject from what I would like to talk about today, which is further down the line here. Within these, well, first of all, these aren't studies. They're articles which refer to studies that suggest that both sex and gender lies on a spectrum. Okay, and note, gender. Okay. My argument has never been that gender doesn't lie on a spectrum. So I have no problem with that. Where I disagree is that sex is on a spectrum. I've gone through this article in nature.com, Sex Redefined. The idea of two sexes is simplistic. Biologists now think there is a wider spectrum than that, by Claire Ainsworth in 18 February 2015. It is currently 13 February 2021. So this is a couple days away from 6 years ago. The article starts out with a 46-year-old pregnant woman who turns out to have an intersex condition. She has two sets of chromosomes, where one set has two X chromosomes, and the other has X and Y. These are known as intersex conditions, or differences or disorders of sex development, or DSDs. Intersex, DSD, same thing. Some researchers now say that as many as 1 person in 100 has some form of DSD. Further down, they are rare, affecting about 1 in 4,500 people. That translates to 0.02222% of the human population. The most inclusive definitions point to the figure of 1 in 100 people having some form of DSD. 1 in 100 is obviously 1%. Under this part of the article, the sex spectrum, the article states, the article admits that there is a definition for a typical male typical female, and there are variations between the two sexes. What is intersex? Inter, between. Intersex, between sexes. So this article does not actually redefine sex. Nobody I know of has ever stated that intersex people do not exist. 2 videos ago, I stated that 0.2% of the population was intersex. Forgive me, I am as much as 0.8% off as far as this article is concerned. Now, 0.8% of a population of over 8 billion is a lot. Granted, I'll give you that. But ultimately, it does not change my argument. I cannot honestly say that 1% of the whole can be used to redefine science, to redefine biology. Now, where we can agree is in regard to how intersex people are treated by society. The article contains a story about a lawsuit filed in South Carolina in May 2013 by the adoptive parents of a child known as MC, who was born with ovotesticular DSD, which is an intersex condition. When MC was 16 months old, doctors performed surgery to assign the child as female, but MC, who is now 8 years old, went on to develop a male gender identity. Because he was in state care at the time of his treatment, the lawsuit alleged not only that the surgery constituted medical malpractice, but also that the state denied him his constitutional right to bodily integrity and his right to reproduce. I can agree that that is terrifying, and that MC should not have had that treatment performed on him, and that something should be done to... In fact, now that I think about it, it's rather difficult to, on one hand, say that children should or should not have the ability to decide for themselves whether or not to transition at such a young age, but then on the other hand, allow for doctors to perform a surgery on a child without their consent. So yes, we can certainly agree on that point. Yet, if biologists continue to show that sex is a spectrum, then society and state will have to grapple with the consequences and work out where and how to draw the line. Many transgender and intersex activists dream of a world where a person's sex or gender is irrelevant. I cannot agree with that. I can agree that gender is largely irrelevant. Sure. But to include sex in that is something that I cannot get behind. Again, when as much as 1% of the population is intersex, I cannot agree that sex needs to be redefined. It has always been stated that about 1% or so is intersex. This does not change my argument. This does not change the arguments of many of the people I know who have spoken on this topic. Now, although some governments are moving in this direction, Greenberg is pessimistic about the prospects of realizing this dream in the United States at least. I think to get rid of gender markers altogether, or to allow a third indeterminate marker, is going to be difficult. Well, and remember this was written 6 years ago. And as of today, we do have 6 states and DC which allow for a third gender category or an X marker on their U.S. birth certificate. So we can at least agree that there is progress in that realm. But I still hold, personally, that sex should not be redefined by 1% of the population. Alright, now come at me with your slings and arrows.